welcome to Comix Relix. I'm Ray Mescalado, and today we're going back in time to a different millennium, to a year that was commemorated by Prince. Yes, I'm talking about 1999, and yes, I'm talking about that big comic event of 1999, the Comics Journal releasing its 100 Best Comics of the Century list. Admittedly, 25 years have passed. It's probably been forgotten by much of fandom. It probably wasn't even recognized by much of fandom, considering it was a comics journal. But I have been feeling nostalgic lately, thinking about my role in making that list. While I'm still building up to talk about the actual top 100 list, I am ready to talk about a different list that appears in this issue. In my column, Fanboy Politic, I offered my own personal list of the 20 best mainstream comics of the century. Not nearly as magnificent as the top 100 of all English language comics, but this one was mine, and so I think I'm more ready to talk about it, see what I decided, wonder what was going through my head at the time, and if I agree with it now. Keeping in mind this is about the 20th century's best mainstream comics. Not of all time, because 25 years have passed. Also keeping in mind that I was always the red-headed stepchild of the Comics Journal, precisely because I wrote about mainstream comics in a very forgiving way. The award-winning red-headed stepchild, I should add. I did win a Snobbies once. Anyway, let's start. So, the top 20 mainstream comics of the century. Number 20 is Sandman by Neil Gaiman and Various. Whether or not it's been overhyped, this was often a beautifully written, if erratically illustrated series. Though the best issues were standalones, such as A Dream of a Thousand Cats and Ramadan, Gaiman's grand weave of stories and storytelling is best appreciated as a whole he intended it to be. You know, I do remember I included Sandman because I felt obliged to acknowledge at least Sandman or Watchmen, because they were big comics at the time. They're still big comics at this time, though they weren't personal favorites, except for A Dream of a Thousand Cats and Ramadan, actually. Looking back now, would I include it in my top 20? No. The fact that the art was so erratic, that you had highs like Michael Zully, and you had issues where the art was just solid but not outstanding, kind of brings it down for me. As time has gone, I've been much more of a stickler for consistent artwork being a huge part of what makes a comic good. I think I always was a stickler, but I was willing to give it space this time. So yeah, Sandman's a great comic. Some people would argue it's one of the greatest comics of all time. I did, but I don't today. Okay, next up. Number 19, Plastic Man, Jack Cole. Highly inspired lunacy, great Golden Age storytelling. I'd say more, but I'm still reading the first volume of Archives. Oh my god, that's such a groupthink thing to admit. Yeah, I heard Plastic Man is great. I haven't read much of it, but I'm going to put it in my top 20 list. That's embarrassing. I have read a little bit more Plastic Man. It is incredibly good superhero comics. Incredibly good. It holds up even today. So it should be there, but it shouldn't be there as well because I didn't know it that well. Shame on you, 1999 Ray Mescalado. Shame on you. I'd say more, but I'm still reading it. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm sorry, it's just so funny. Obviously, it's been a while since I've looked at this. Okay, number 18, Saga of the Swamp Thing, Alan Moore and Various. While uneven in quality, the way Moore grounded his stories on the mundanely evil aspects of the modern world, and from there built a strangely beautiful love story for his main characters, made this thought-provoking horror series as distinctive now as when it redefined the genre in the early 1980s. That's fair. Would I include it today? No. I don't know what else to say. I know there are lots of Alan Moore fans who revere the series. I find it a very enjoyable read. Yeah, it's a no. Okay, next up. Number 17, Doom Patrol number 34, Grant Morrison and Richard Case. Morrison's best work for the mainstream, where he takes the ludicrous nature of superhero comics, and this series in particular, and simply revels in it. Disembodied brains and robot bodies, talking gorillas and repressed bestiality. This is more fun than Kill Your Boyfriend and JLA combined, more obliquely insightful than The Invisibles, and the Smiths quote that bookends the story is sheer icing on the cake. Why did I single out that one issue? Well, it is the best issue of Doom Patrol to me. I still think that, and it is a very funny issue. Would I include it today in the top 20 of the best mainstream comics of the 20th century? No. So far, the first four choices from 1999 me, I would not agree with. Bit of a shock. Number 16, EC War Comics, Harvey Kurtzman and Various. War is hell, told masterfully over and over again. Okay, would I include this in the top 20 now? I would at least consider it more than the previous ones, but there's a lot of good monumental stories in there. So yeah, it would still be in contention at least. Number 15, Fourth World Saga, Jack Kirby. Kirby Unleashed, the king at his most cosmic, and the last true peak of the most significant career in American comics. Was it Kirby's last true peak? I know some people would make a case for Commandy. Personally, I actually prefer Captain Victory, but it is really good Kirby comics. That would also still be in contention for the top 20, but not definitively in the top 20, I guess. Number 14, V for Vendetta, Alan Moore and David Lloyd. Moore's most compelling superhero comic ever, perhaps because he was less concerned about deconstructing the genre than he was about creating a morality play on anarchy and the human cost of fascism. Yeah, I do like this more than Watchmen even today. It would still have a good chance of being in the top 20 as far as I'm concerned. Number 13, Bill and Ted's excellent comic, Evan Dorkin. The most fun, most exuberant comic Marvel has published in the past 2 decades. Who cares if it was licensed? This is the kind of funny book the world needs more of. I gotta agree with that. That said, number 11 stands out more than the rest of the series. I do think that if I was going to do this top 20 list again, and I am thinking about it as a follow-up, I would include Bill and Ted 11, the way I included only Doom Patrol 34, because that Lincoln assassination issue is just perfect. Sheer perfection. So yeah, that would stay. Number 12, Stormwatch, Warren Ellis and Various. That Various guy is doing really well in the top 20 list. Ellis and his collaborators took a crappy title and turned it into the best Image-era superhero comic yet. Sure, it was grim and gritty, but in its depiction of ideological conflicts through superheroic archetypes, the series was also wildly inventive and surprisingly erudite. I love Ellis' Stormwatch, I still do. I'm rethinking his authority, and I love Planetary, which is in a whole other millennium. But there's a lot going for it. Yeah, I think it would still be in my top 20. It's making me want to reread it again, to tell you the truth. Number 11, Times Squared by Howard Chaykin. Chaykin may keep falling in and out of favor, but the 2 graphic novels he did for this series, never mind the weak American flag crossover, are the stylishly slick, beautifully designed epitome of Chaykin's hyper-jive retro, the hero as narcissistic bastard Jones. That's quite a mouthful from me. He may tell the same kind of stories over and over again, but this is where they're told best, with heart and soul and a playful wink at the reader. Yes, this would definitely be in my top 20. It May even be my top 10 at this point. It's number 11 here. Part of me thinks it should be higher. I still love Times Square. The Satisfaction of Black Mariah has the best Bogman police / kaiju police car sex scene ever. This one definitely would stay. Number 10, Astro City, Life in the Big City. Kurt Busiek, Brent Anderson, Alex Ross. The first 6 issues of this remarkable series are the best of what I once called the Nuevo Traditionalist subgenre of superhero comics. Busiek actually called me out on the stupidity of the term Nuevo Traditionalist, so I don't know why I dragged it back. He's right, I was just being silly, playful, but staying on point, Life in the Big City has at least 3 great stories, and if you include The Nearness of You, which is the best Astro City story ever, definitely would still be in my top 20 list today. Number 9, The Dark Knight Returns. Frank Miller, Klaus Janson, and Lynn Varley. Year 1 may have been a better comic technically, okay, but the epic sweep and mythic vigilantism of this series makes the most compelling vision of Batman yet created. Okay, I don't know what this is about Year 1 being a better comic technically, but I'm going to go with Dark Knight. I think Dark Knight is actually a better comic overall. David Mazzucchelli does such a great job with Year 1, but I do think Dark Knight is better. And yeah, I don't know why I said that about Year 1. I guess I had to admit that it was something I considered. But I do prefer Dark Knight. I do think it's a better comic. I do think it's the best vision of Batman yet created. So yeah, we'll go with that. Number 8, The Death of Superman. Jerry Siegel, Kurt Swan, and George Klein. Not the 1990s version, of course. This classic story paradoxically sums up the charms of DC's Silver Age by imagining the greatest loss possible. I don't know what I was thinking there. Why isn't For the Man Who Has Everything or Whatever Happened to the Man of Steel in the list? I think I wanted to include some Silver Age, and this was the only one for DC I thought of, which, bad move, 1999 me. Yeah, no, I don't know. This would definitely not make my list today. Number 7, Mad, Harvey Kurtzman and Various. A comic whose no-brainer attitude thinly masked some incredibly astute satire. That's not much of a summation of Mad. I had space limitations, I guess, so that's why some of these explanations are just so short. But yeah, Mad would still be in the top 10 even today. 6, Transmetropolitan, Warren Ellis and Derek Robertson. I know this comic is relatively new, but it's been so good up to this point that I'm willing to take it this high even if the rest of its run sucks pig vomit. Wow, how edgy of you, 1999 Ray. Gonzo journalism in a dystopic future that's lurched into self-parody. This is a comic whose heartfelt passion and lunatic rage meld masterfully in lead character Spider Jerusalem. Another current comic that I considered putting on this list was Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon's Preacher, except that series hinges much more on the eventual outcome of the series. Oh, I'm glad I didn't include Preacher. Would I include Transmet today? It would still be in contention, but I think it would actually drop out of a top 20 for me, personally. Today. 1999 me sure dug its shit, though. Pig vomit aside. Number 5. Grendel number 16 to 19, Matt Wagner. Wagner's greatest creative strength is a formless curiosity about comics' narrative potential. His greatest creation is a Hunter Rose Grendel. He combines the two in this ambitious pair of stories. A filmic police procedural with strong noir overtones, and a Kurtzman-esque farce that plays as self-induced tragedy. I love those issues of Grendel. I love those 2 short stories and the fact that Wagner is playing with it. It would still be in my top 20, but the fact that it's number 5 is kind of ridiculous to me. Today. Again, looking at the previous millennium me. So I agree with its inclusion. I don't agree with its placement. That's it. Number 4. The Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck, Don Rosa. An epic saga which performs the curiously satisfying continuity trick of building a linear history of Bart's Scrooge stories. Even trickier and much more satisfying is the way Rosa uses his immense comedic gifts to bring out a nuanced complexity in Uncle Scrooge's character. Yeah, definitely right comic, right placement, definitely. Number 3, The Spirit, Will Eisner. Eisner at his innovative peak, defining the comics page and narrative technique without sacrificing fun and adventure and comedic romance. Okay, yeah, it's Spirit. It's Spirit. It belongs up here. I have no problem with that one. Number 2, Fantastic Four, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. So obviously I mean the 100 plus issue run by the two of them. The greatest of all Silver Age comics, bar none. Cosmic space opera and anguished soap opera never combined more powerfully than in the hands of Kirby and Lee, and this series is their greatest gift to comics fans. Yeah, number 2, that sounds about right. Definitely sounds right. It's Fantastic Four. It's Kirby and Lee. And at number 1 is Uncle Scrooge by Carl Barks. Everything that's great about comics can be found in the pages of Barks' Duck Stories. You either get this or you don't, and God help you if you don't. Well, that's kind of condescending of 1999 me, but I do agree with the choice. I do agree that it's the greatest mainstream comic of all time. So yeah, that's good. So looking at the list, the top half certainly would fare better with me today than the bottom half, some exceptions included. But it does make me want to create a new top 20 mainstream comics of the 20th century list. Stay tuned. Next time I will give you a revised list to show 1999 me how to do it right. So as always, thanks for indulging me. I'm Ray Mescalado. Have a good day. Goodbye.